Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're tackling some seriously interesting predictions about the future of humanity.
Oh, are we talking sci-fi stuff or like...
Not exactly. We're looking at some recent talks by Sadhguru.
Ah, interesting choice.
Yeah, I thought so too. And get this, in one of these talks, he just drops this line. Ready for it. He predicts that, and I quote, all the heavens will collapse in the next few decades.
All the heavens.
Yeah.
Okay, that's definitely a statement that's meant to get your attention. So what's the deal? Is he talking about some like literal apocalypse here?
Well, to get that, we kind of need to get Sadhguru right. I mean, the way he uses language.
True. He's a master of metaphor.
Yeah.
Always weaving in symbolism to convey these like complex ideas.
Exactly. So to answer your question, no, he's not talking about stars literally falling from the sky or anything like that.
Okay, good. I was going to say.
It's more symbolic, you know?
Right. So if it's not a literal apocalypse, what's he referring to?
He's talking about a monumental shift in belief systems, particularly the ones like rooted in traditional religions.
Ah, I see where this is going.
You know how for centuries we've relied on all these external authorities, scriptures, gurus, you name it, to tell us what to believe?
The classic model. Yeah.
Sadhguru's observing that for maybe, possibly the first time in history, more people are like, hold on a second. They're prioritizing their own logic and personal experience over just taking things on blind faith.
Fascinating. So it's like a questioning of the old ways, challenging the established order.
Yeah, and that right there, that's where things get really interesting.
Because that questioning can lead to liberation, but it can also lead to chaos, right?
You hit the nail on the head. It's both, isn't it? I mean, it's incredibly empowering to, step back and question beliefs that you've always taken for granted and come to your own conclusions. That's like true intellectual freedom.
Totally. And Sadhguru has a really powerful way of putting it. He says, and I love this quote, if you make them swallow it, they cannot digest it.
Such a great analogy, basically saying that force-feeding beliefs just doesn't work. To really internalize something, to really understand it, you have to grapple with it yourself.
You have to chew on it a bit, make it your own.
Exactly. But then, like you said, there's that flip side, the potential for chaos. I mean, if everyone's just off creating their own personalized belief system, how can we even function as a society? Don't we need to agree on at least some fundamental truths?
It's the classic dilemma, isn't it? Individual freedom versus social cohesion.
Mm-hmm.
So what's Sadhguru's take on that?
Well, he seems to think that as these traditional structures of authority, the heavens, as he calls them, collapse, something new will emerge. He believes we're moving into an era where truth is the only authority, and authority cannot be the truth anymore.
Wow, truth is the only authority. That's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah.
But it also raises so many questions, like, whose truth are we talking about?
Exactly. It's a beautiful idea in theory, but in reality, what happens when my truth clashes with yours? Things can get pretty messy pretty fast.
And this is where things get really tricky. We have to start asking some deeper questions about the nature of truth itself. Is it objective and universal? Or is it subjective and personal? And if it's the latter, how do we even begin to navigate a world where everyone's claiming to have their own version of it? Especially in this age of like misinformation and deep fakes.
It's like we're being forced to develop this super strong internal compass just to make sense of it all.
That's exactly it. We can't rely on those old signposts anymore. We have to become more discerning about what we choose to believe and why.
Which I guess brings us full circle back to Sadhguru's point about the heavens collapsing. He's essentially saying that the old ways of blindly accepting information are over. He uses some pretty hilarious examples to illustrate this. He talks about different heavens with their promised rewards.
Like what?
Like delicious food cooked by this celestial chef, or legless ladies floating in clouds.
Legless ladies?
I know, right?
Okay, that's classic Sadhguru. Using humor to highlight the absurdity of it all.
Yeah.
He's poking fun at the idea that we should just blindly accept these promises without examining them critically.
Oh, totally. And he tells this really funny anecdote to drive this point home. It's about a Sunday school class in Alabama.
Oh, this should be good.
The teacher is, going on and on about what you have to do to get to heaven. And this little kid just pipes up and says, you got to die first.
Huh. That's brilliant. He's highlighting the disconnects between blind faith and, the reality of life and death that we all face.
Yeah, it's like the kid in the story is suddenly waking up to the absurdity of it all. And Sadhguru is encouraging all of us to do the same, to question, to explore, to arrive at our own understanding of truth.
It's a call for conscious evolution, both individually and collectively. And it leads us to a pretty huge question. What happens when we're no longer willing to just accept what we're told? What happens when we all become the authority of our own truths?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And one we'll be diving into in part 2 of this deep dive.
I'm intrigued.
But before we go there, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What stands out to you about this shift in authority and this emphasis on personal truth? What challenges and opportunities do you see arising from this? Let's continue the conversation in the comments below. Back again for more of Sadhguru's take on the future.
Last time we were talking about this whole heavens collapsing thing.
Right. The shift away from traditional authority towards more personal experience, logic, all that.
You guys had some really sharp insights in the comments about this, by the way, especially the potential for both liberation and chaos.
Yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword. And Sadhguru doesn't shy away from the potential downsides either. In fact, he's got a pretty sobering prediction about what happens when those old sources of comfort and meaning start to crumble.
Oh yeah, he gets pretty dark, doesn't he? With that whole chemical trap idea.
Basically, his point is that when people lose faith in the external structures, they'll turn to something else to fill the void.
Cool. Exactly. And he thinks it's going to be chemicals, drugs, alcohol, the whole 9 yards.
He even throws out some pretty scary statistics, like 70% of the U.S. population is on prescription meds, and drug and alcohol consumption has gone up something like 10,000% in the last 25 years.
It's definitely a wake-up call.
I mean, it's one thing to talk about philosophy and shifting paradigms, but those numbers paint a pretty bleak picture, don't they?
No question. You start thinking about the implications. Addiction, health problems, societal breakdown. It's heavy stuff.
So is he being overly pessimistic? Are we all doomed to this dystopian, drug-fueled future?
It's hard to say for sure. I mean, those statistics can be debated, and predictions are tricky business. But even if he's off by a few degrees, I think the underlying point is valid. We live in a world that's just constantly demanding more from us. Faster, better, more productive. It's no wonder people are stressed out and looking for an escape.
So it's not just the collapse of traditional belief systems, it's the whole pressure cooker of modern life, too.
Exactly. We're losing those old anchors, and we haven't really figured out how to navigate this new landscape.
Which is where, I guess, Sadhguru's message of inner transformation comes in.
That's the antidote. He's not just pointing out the problems. He's offering a way forward, a way to cultivate well-being from the inside out.
Inner transformation? What's that in a nutshell? Meditation retreats, yoga studios, all that stuff.
It's more than just techniques. It's about shifting your whole orientation. It's about realizing that lasting peace and happiness, they come from within, not from chasing external things.
Okay, so it's more of an inside job. But how do you actually do that? Especially in a world that's constantly pulling you in a million different directions.
That's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
But Sadhguru draws a lot on ancient Indian wisdom, which saw inner well-being as the ultimate form of service.
Service, you mean like helping others?
Exactly. The idea being that if you cultivate that inner peace and stability, you can actually contribute more to the world.
So it's not about withdrawing from the world, becoming some kind of hermit.
No, it's about engaging with the world from a place of strength and balance. So you're not constantly reacting to external forces.
This is making me think back to that idea of truth is the only authority. Maybe the connection is that as we do this inner work, as we develop that inner compass, we become more capable of discerning truth for ourselves.
Hey, I think you're right on the money. It's about becoming the authority of your own experience, not blindly following someone else's dictates.
So we become less dependent on external validation and more self-reliant in a way.
Exactly. And that ties in with another one of Sadhguru's key points, generational responsibility.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one. He was saying that we have this responsibility to leave the world better than we found it, to create a future where our kids and grandkids can actually thrive.
And he's worried that if we keep going down this path of chemical dependency and external validation, we're going to leave them a pretty messed up legacy.
It's kind of a heavy burden, isn't it, thinking about the world we're leaving for future generations?
It is. But it's also empowering in a way. We have a choice. We can choose to perpetuate the problems, or we can choose to create a different future.
A future that's more conscious, more sustainable, more, humane.
Exactly. And that choice, it starts with each one of us.
So if we buy into this whole generational responsibility thing, what are the actual steps we can take to make sure that future is a good one?
That's the million-dollar question. and one we'll dive into in the final part of this deep dive.
All right, so we've covered a lot with Sadhguru's predictions, shifting authority, the whole chemical trap thing, and of course inner
A
transformation.
lot to unpack, for sure.
But let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk solutions. How do we actually make this happen? A future where humanity thrives.
Well, Sadhguru talks a lot about education, but not just, the traditional kind.
Not just textbooks and tests.
Right. It's got to be more than that. It's about fostering critical thinking,
Yeah.
teaching young people how to question, how to analyze, how to form their own opinions.
And how to sift through all the noise, right? With all the information overload these days.
Exactly. Discerning truth from falsehood. It's a crucial skill. And then there's emotional intelligence, helping young people understand and manage their emotions. That's key for navigating this crazy
And
world.
it makes you wonder if our current school systems are really doing enough.
Yeah, good question. Maybe a complete overhaul is needed. I don't know. But education is just one piece of the puzzle, right? What about technology?
Technology, the double-edged sword.
Exactly. We often see it as the problem, distraction, addiction, you name it. But can it also be part of the solution?
Well, Sadhguru isn't anti-technology, is he? He's more about using it consciously, right?
Right. And there are tons of examples of tech being used for good. Mindfulness apps, online learning platforms, communities, connecting people with shared values.
It's all about how we use it, I guess, like any tool.
Absolutely. Technology can connect us, educate us, help us grow, but it can't replace real human connection. That empathy and compassion, those are essential for building a better world.
It's about balance, isn't it?
Always about balance.
And speaking of balance, Sadhguru also talks about sustainable living, right?
Okay.
Living in a way that respects the planet.
It's a huge part of generational responsibility.
Mhm.
We got to shift from a mindset of taking to a mindset of giving back. If we want future generations to inherit a planet that's actually livable.
We've got to make different choices.
Exactly. About what we consume, how we use energy, how we treat the earth.
It's about recognizing that we're all connected, right? Part of this larger ecosystem.
Exactly.
And then there's the whole meaning and purpose piece. It seems like Sadhguru believes that when people have a sense of purpose, they're less likely to fall into those traps we talked about. The chemical dependence, the consumerism, the need for constant external validation.
It makes sense, doesn't it? When you have a reason to get out of bed in the morning, a sense of direction, you're more resilient, more focused.
So how do we cultivate that? Can you teach someone to have a purpose?
I don't think it's about teaching, per se. It's about creating the conditions where purpose can flourish, encouraging exploration, creativity, giving young people opportunities to discover their passions.
To find their own unique way of making a difference.
Exactly. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from all this. There's no single roadmap to a better future.
It's more like a choose-your-own-adventure kind of thing.
In a way, yeah. It's about each of us doing our own inner work, cultivating awareness, compassion, purpose, and then bringing those qualities into the world through our actions and choices.
So it's an ongoing process, a constant evolution, but one that's definitely worth it.
Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who comes after us.
It's been quite a journey exploring all this with you. Sadhguru's predictions definitely give us a lot to think about.
They do.
Big thanks to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the future. Until next time.